morning. It is morning huddle time. I'm Chad Prinky here alongside Stacy Holzinger, as always.
The nature of the beast is the competitive nature of the industry.
Is if you can see it, you can be it.
It's all about the people. The people are what make it great and worthwhile.
Yeah, anything that I think helps build the story behind the company is great.
These are the things that that you're like, we don't need that because we have plenty of work right now. Got it. But if you don't do it now, where are you going to have work in the future? The Morning Huddle Construction Show is fortunate to have 5 sponsors for Season 7, helping us to spread the word and create positive change in the construction industry. And we want to give a shout out to each of them and thank them now. First is Katz Abosch. This is a middle market accounting firm with a deep specialization in construction, tax, audit, accounting, fantastic group of people. Next is Lawrence Law. This is a boutique law firm that works with contractors and helps them with their day-to-day legal needs as well as all of their most significant legal challenges that they might run up against. Lawrence Law. Then we have Sandy Spring Bank, which is a regional bank in Maryland with a group of people who really understand what the needs of construction businesses are and who partner with you to achieve your financial aims. So Sandy Spring Bank. And then we have Marsh McLennan Agency, bonding and insurance professionals really just have unparalleled insight into the construction industry. They're the best in the business. And then lastly, we have Genesis AEC. And Genesis is a full service architecture, engineering, and construction management firm with a deep specialization in the life sciences industry. We also happen to have some of their folks help us with guest hosting from time to time. It's morning huddle time. Stacy Holzinger, what's happening?
It's cold in Maryland.
It is legit cold in Maryland. Yeah, it was. We're into the single digits. That's rare territory for Maryland. You don't get it every winter.
Yep.
This has been a cold one.
But it was a great football weekend for me.
Football weekend. I mean, it was just a ton of fun.
Yeah. And I told you, house divided over here. Eagles versus Commanders, Redskins, whatever you want to call them.
The football team.
Yeah. I'm excited for Sunday.
Yeah, I'm excited for Sunday too. It'll be a lot of fun. Depends on what part of Maryland you're from as to whether this weekend was fun for you.
Yep.
But yeah, it was. I was up in Rochester, New York during all of it for a kids hockey tournament, and it was warmer there than it is here. Now that's not the case anymore. I think it's -1 there now, or something like that. But it is the joys of winter, man. I know it's insane, but I kind of like it.
I do and I don't. I mostly like I need the sun, man.
Yeah, well, it's pretty out, right? We got that going for us, depending on where you are. You got the snow on the ground. You get a little sun off the snow. Mm-hmm. It's going to be cold. Might as well be pretty out.
Yeah. I like sledding too. It's fun. So
sledding, yeah.
I'm getting a little old though.
Yeah, I'm not risking it personally. I don't think I was ever into sledding. Even when I was a little kid, I was like, I'm going to die.
You play hockey though.
I know, but sledding's like totally no control. You just like let go. I don't ski. I don't sled. I don't go down hills. Okay. I think that's what it really boils down to. I don't go down hills. I don't, and I like I would never in a soapbox derby. I'd have never been comfortable. That would have been a nightmare for me.
Our guest is coming from nice Tampa warm weather. So.
Yeah, but he's not always been from there. He knows what it is to be to have some winter. So we got Joe Wilson joining us today. Joe, thank you for being here.
Of course, guys. Great to see you all.
Yeah, thanks, man. So Joe, where you're from? Are you originally from Maryland? I know you spent some time in Maryland, but are you originally from Maryland?
Yeah, all of my family's still up in the Maryland, Northern Virginia, DC area. So born and raised in Gaithersburg, and went to school in Baltimore. So yeah, my stomping grounds through and through.
And now you're down in sunny Florida, where it's like, a freezing 40 something.
Oh, dude, I've gotten soft since we moved down here. 46 degrees is really cold.
that's So I remember it was years ago. I was watching a show. Do you remember I don't know if it's still on. whatever. It was on TV. There's a show called like Life Below Zero or something
I've heard
like
of
that.
it.
And it like chronicles, it's a reality show, and it chronicles people who live above the Arctic Circle
Mhm.
and just kind of like watches how they are around the Arctic Circle and,
Right.
and watches like how they live their lives. Right. And there's this scene in the summer, right? Summer, quote unquote. And it was like 23 degrees. And the kids are outside in shorts and t-shirts, and they're like kicking a soccer ball, and it's 23 degrees. And I was looking at that like, they're insane, but it's all context, right?
Yep.
It's when you say right now, when you say 40 something, I'm like, you kidding me?
Right.
I'd be outside mowing the lawn. Good to go.
Yeah, I have gotten soft.
Gotten soft. Yeah. That's it happens to all of us, Joe. It's all right. You can always toughen up. You
Yeah.
can always toughen. So Joe Wilson is the CEO and founder of Projexion. I'm going to let Joe tell you more about Projexion, but the bottom line is it's a technology that is helping contractors to get a grip on their metrics and really understand their KPIs. So it's very close to my heart, honestly, Joe. In my book, I talk about the importance of contractors measuring what matters in their business. And I always feel kind of bad when I reference that chapter for a couple of reasons. One is that if you're not currently doing it, it feels like you're failing. When I say like, you got to measure what matters, what I mean by that is you have to reverse engineer your business down to the metrics that lead to success. These are key performance indicators. And I'm sure we'll spend some time talking about that, and what those things are. But you got to be able to monitor the things that if you want to be successful. It's kind of like, tracking diet and exercise if you want to achieve a certain weight, right?
Exactly.
You can't just be like, yeah, I'm working hard to lose weight. What are you doing? Well, I'm hoping, and I'm just I'm guessing, there's a reason that all these trackers and, I got this dumb ring thing. I love this ring, this Aura ring deal, right? It's the trackers that help us to monitor, are we heading toward our success? Right? Are we heading toward? So, so I feel bad about it for one reason, because when I talk about it and people aren't doing it, they're like, "Oh crap, I think I'm failing," and I hate making people feel bad. But the second reason that I feel bad when I talk about it is it's so incredibly difficult for companies to get this data, and since getting to know Projexion and what you guys are doing, I am cautiously optimistic that there really are some solutions emerging that help companies to get their hands on that data. So tell us a little bit more about yourself, Joe, a little bit more about Projexion.
Sure. Yeah. Thank you guys again for giving the opportunity here. It's really an exciting time in our industry. So I came up in the industry. My dad was an entrepreneur for my whole life. Started and founded an owner's rep firm out of Gaithersburg. So it's kind of been around me for my entire life. And one of the things that he would always say growing up is, there's always a better way, and that kind of stuck with me. Is that there's our industry has a track record, I think, of just doing things the old way because that's just what we know. And it's not always the best way. And so I took that into my early career and just was constantly massaging around. I'm started my career 15 years ago with a large GC out of DC, pivoted over to commercial development and then over to the owner's rep space. But throughout that time, it was just immensely difficult to parse through these logs of information and figure out where is our risk in reality. What are the right questions to be asking? And it was just incredibly difficult to know whether we were on track or not. And
yeah, man.
So that kind of got the wheels in motion for what eventually became Projexion. Was wrestling with that. How do I make that process easier?
And where did you? Where were you in your career at that moment when you started saying like, God, I need this data? Were you on the GC side? Were you on an owner's rep side? Where were you?
I was at the owner's side. So
Yep.
it actually happened through COVID, when I'm sitting across the table from the contractor team, and they're saying that hey, everything is fine, we're doing well, all things considering, and I'm seeing things on the news. We've all went through it. It was a crazy time of chaos, right? The material shortages, pricing spikes, supply chain issues. You couldn't work within 6 feet of each other. It was nuts. And so for me to be hearing that, yeah, we're doing well, that can't possibly be true. Um, and then what I did was just hours after hours would take these logs of information and say, okay, well, where is our risk in reality? Are we actually meeting the milestones that we set out to do? And come to find that, we are so far off. There's no shot that, that we can recover.
Hmm.
And so, it was, I started to question a little bit, is this pure, are they willfully withholding critical information from the team to make themselves look better? Or is it more of they don't know what they don't know?
Yeah.
And they didn't have the visibility into the data to really actually know where the risks were. And so that's, it was more this lack of insight and intuition on the project team to know what questions to ask of their data,
Yeah.
more than it was, lying or
Totally.
withholding, critical information.
Yeah, I've learned to assume when you're not getting what you want, assume that there's not nefarious intent.
Right.
Mhm.
Assume positive intent first, and
Right.
then as you explore that, you figure out that somebody's actually trying to screw you. That's different. But it's important to begin with that generosity of spirit.
Yeah.
Otherwise you'll make people panic.
Right.
Um,
Yeah.
So okay, cool. So that makes sense, man.
Yeah. So that was kind of the outset of, what I ended up doing from that time was I built an Excel spreadsheet, as, that was the only tool at my disposal,
Totally.
right, to take these PDFs and then pump them in manually into my spreadsheet. And I had built a series of probably 10 KPIs, key performance indicators, like what are our most important things that we need to be tracking? Are we meeting our critical dates on our schedule? Are we exceeding a certain number of change events or change orders every month? Is the architect responding in a timely fashion to the things in their court? Like, are we moving along the things that we can control? And so that's what I had built. And then we ended up, credit to the team, started to use this effectively to the point where these projects then all finished on time and within budget, in spite of the COVID situation. So
Yeah.
here I am thinking, okay, yeah, it was an immense manual process for me to do that. Nobody has that kind of time. Um, how do I make that simpler, right? How do I make it more streamlined? Because again, if we can't carve out the kind of time that it's needed to make sense of the data, then it's just going to keep collecting dust like it has been. Um, and so that's, once those projects wrapped up, I said, okay, I know that this is proven to be the case when a team is aware of issues before they become issues. We have a fighting chance of doing something about it and turning a negative into a positive. And so that's what I set out to do a few years ago.
Awesome. All right, good. That sets the table nicely, and I think what you've described is a microcosm of the data crisis. So, talk about as the name of the show. Today's episode is the data crisis in our industry. So, talk about the data crisis as you see it.
Yeah. Excuse me. There's you kind of have to go back, 20 years or so. But I think where it really starts is this experience gap. Our industry has such a long and steep learning curve.
Yep.
I think it's something 10 years minimum before you can actually be running your own projects, and being able to have enough experience to forecast what's coming just from your own experience, having been through it. And so that learning curve has created such a top heavy environment where the people who are really running the work are people with decades of experience, and guiding the show and being able to, direct their teams in which way to go because they've been through it and have just this built-in battle hardened experience, right?
There are a lot of project managers in name only.
Right.
Right. Meaning, there's a senior or a project executive or a VP behind them who are actually running that project. And you have a project manager in name only. There's a lot of that out there.
Right. And it's I think the unfortunate part of it is those experienced leaders are retiring very quickly and more quickly than they can be replaced. And so what you have is project managers in name only being forced into positions of trying to guide a project, but they're really not, they don't have the intuition and experience necessary to
so they're getting that trial
effectively.
by fire, right? They're getting thrown into the deep end. And these are I'm saying these things out loud. These are the terms that I hear. We interview when we come in and start working with a company, Joe, at Wellbuilt. When we come in and start working with a company, we interview all their employees, right? And we'll oftentimes ask them, like, what kind of training, what kind of structured training and education are you getting? And the terms that we hear constantly are, I just kind of got thrown in the deep end. It's trial by fire. It's
sink or swim.
Sink or swim, right? All these different terms that basically just indicate there is no training, there is no education. And you know why? Because exactly what you're talking about, it's all learned experience. And all of this knowledge is through hard knocks. And it is a great, it is, how should I put it? I'm going to put it this way. That is an extremely durable way to learn because there's no teacher quite as potent as experience, right? Because pain is a fantastic teacher. Fear is a fantastic teacher, right? These are things that make you go like, I'm never going to do that shit again, right? Like, or whatever else. Right? So but there's no formal education because there's no data. There's no, it's all up here. And that's why we find ourselves saying things like, well, you can't really be a PM in this world until you've been doing it for 10 years. Well, okay.
Right.
Boy, seems like a slow way to do it.
Right. Exactly. And that when these leaders retire, all of that knowledge base and intuition leaves with them. Right. I mean, it's not transferable, or very easily transferable without, that dedicated education piece, which again, nobody has the time to do. So
it's missing.
So what we've seen over the years, and it's been particularly noticeable since about 2018, was the desperate need to backfill these that inexperience with technical solutions that help them perform specific parts of their job better. Right. So we're talking single point solutions that are, a new accounting tool that'll help you, do this faster, or, a new way of tracking safety violations, or a new way of, tracking on the job site, or a new way of, and many of them are fantastic tools. The challenge, I think, that this now has created, and where we go with the data crisis, is that they are built to solve a specific thing, but miss the big picture, in my view, which is this data needs to flow seamlessly so that these systems can communicate with one another, so that the data is in a cohesive place and people can take action on it. Because if data is just siloed as it has been, then it just sits there, collects dust. You can't take action. And that's really the benefit of having the data, is that you not only see where things are at a single point in time, but that it informs what you need to do next. And what actions you need to take. And so that's where we see now, and there's statistics out there, 95+% of all data collected is unused in any kind of decision making.
That sounds like an underestimate. I completely agree.
Completely. It's a massive number. And these solutions, I mean, there are thousands and thousands of new tools that are coming out, and our industry, frankly, is not equipped to handle that kind of just influx of new solutions. We don't have the time to adopt it or learn these new things. And so then companies are now facing this dilemma of, okay, either we do nothing with our data, or we hire a whole team of these data analysts, data scientists, innovation leaders, and a whole department specifically for that, when that really is not the bread and butter of builders.
Right. When you have to add that type of overhead to get value out of your systems, to get the data out of the systems you're already spending a pile of money on, right? Your whatever Procores and your whatever else you're using, right? If you've got a stack on top of that, another $250,000 in people overhead. Or something along those lines. I mean, the companies that can actually afford to do that, that list starts to get really tiny.
Yes. Yes. And you're exactly right. I mean, there's very few who can actually afford those kinds of teams. And so that's where we see this data crisis, right? The volume of data is not going away. It's only getting more. And how do we help the next generation of builders get up to speed much more quickly? How do we fill this need of of experience, and inject this next generation with a level of intuition that they didn't necessarily have to grind for 10 years to acquire?
Yeah. That's man. I love it, and I'm laughing because I think of all the different scenarios that I've watched, and almost like the disbelief and frustration from the veteran staff when they're like, "Well, how did you not know that job was going sideways?" And right, and the 35-year-old or the 30-year-old is like, "How did you know?
Right.
Like, how would I have known? I don't, and everybody's just made to feel kind of stupid on one
Right.
end of the spectrum, or just miffed. Like, how are we not seeing this on the other side of the spectrum? And so demystifying that, bringing the truth forward in usable metrics that matter, can help to translate the old salt's gut feeling, proven into intuition, gut feeling that something ain't right, into a provable data point that's inarguable, right? And
Yep.
and that 65-year-old kick-ass superintendent that didn't need a software to tell him that. Well,
Right.
congratulations, but aren't you glad that Junior now sees it? Right.
Right.
So talk a little bit about what Projexion is, what it does, and how you're what angle you're taking on the data crisis.
Sure. So we've seen a number of tools that focus on forcing a change of behavior. Like, oh, well, if you want to be better at managing your projects, instead of using this tool, you have to use ours. And so now people are like, okay, well, I have to shift over. Well, we've focused heavily on meeting people where they are, by building a system that integrates agnostically with the tools they use.
Whatever they're using.
Whatever they're using.
Yeah.
And so we meet them where they are. We have a robust cloud computing engine where we integrate these tools into our system. We pull the data in, we clean it, homogenize it, we warehouse it, we run analytics on it, and visualize it all in one place. And so it's basically removing all of the coding and the software engineering components out of their hands, and just say, like, look, focus on building. We'll manage the complexities of your data for you, and then provide you something that is specific and meaningful to you and your role, you and your company, whether it's a specific project team, specific project manager or project lead, portfolio of projects. And so we provide it in a way that is, sure, there are graphs, sure, there are numbers that, say, hey, your architect is taking too long to respond to the things in their court, or hey, you've missed this number of critical path activities, and here's the downstream effects. but we also say, here's what you should do next with this
Right.
information. And that, I think, is a major missing piece, because a dashboard is a dashboard is a dashboard. Anybody, if you have Excel, can manipulate a dashboard. But it's oftentimes static data, a snapshot in time without the historical context. So, to be able to go back in time and say, hey, well, what was happening 3 months ago? Are we getting better or are we getting worse? What does that trend tell us about where we're going if we don't make certain adjustments? And so, it plugs into all of your base systems. And then we also have integrations with, large language models that can interpret the data set in such a way that says, okay, here's how these things are related to one another. Your RFIs, increasing at a certain pace and the architect taking too long. And now you're going to be experiencing changes 2 months down the road.
Yeah.
So it's a complete connection of the dots from raw data to what do I do next with this?
That's outstanding. And equally applicable for owners as well as contractors?
Yeah, if not more so, because owners are typically in the dark, not completely, but they don't have the.
They're definitely just relying on for the most part, right? I mean, sorry to interrupt you, but they're mostly relying on their architects and their contractors to tell them what's going on, right? I mean,
exactly.
That's the deal.
Exactly. And, again, from my perspective, coming from the owner side, seeing a 60-page packet of, OAC meeting minutes, and it's just log after log after log. Oh, okay. That immediately goes in the trash.
Totally. I've sat in so many of these things, OAC meetings, and I've facilitated some of those over the years, and on project teams that are struggling to collaborate and communicate. And it is so true. It's so perfunctory, and all owners are really doing is sitting there asking themselves, like, who's lying? Right.
I mean, unfortunately, that's probably true. But yeah, it's, in my experience, there's a lot of, hey, where's the largest, shiniest object that I can roll across the floor to distract this entire conversation, and everybody immediately is tracking this thing that has nothing to do with how do we actually move.
We've included pictures of the preliminary right on floor 4. Here's everybody goes, ooh.
Exactly. So, this isn't intended to be an aha, I caught kind of tool. It's really like, look, if you contractor are successful and you architect are successful and me owner and whomever, everybody at the table is successful at doing what we have to do, then the project has a much higher shot at being a successful project. We're shaking hands and high-fiving at the end of the day, like great relationships, where it's you think of a team, right? Like these teams now in the playoffs. So, the NFL, they're it's all family, that this is, hey, I'm going to do my job. We're going to hold each other accountable. We're going to do our job together. And, we're going to fight to the end to make sure that this can, be successful for us. And this is really intended to be that same kind of, changing of the culture almost, in the sense of how do we work in unison together, understanding that, hey, at the outset, we agreed to follow these specific KPIs and metrics. And this is the path to success. And this projection will help us understand when and how we are diverging from that path and help get us back into alignment.
Yeah. So I have like a handful of kind of rapid fire questions, and because I'm saying in advance they're rapid fire, just know there are more coming behind it. So maybe shorter answers here, so that I can ask them all. Are you focused more on creating dashboards for projects or for companies?
For companies.
And so, but if I wanted a dashboard just for, like, let's say $1 billion project, is that also something you guys could do?
Oh yeah. So we start at the portfolio like a pyramid. Top of the pyramid, is your portfolio, and then we just get deeper into the details, as deep as you want to go.
Okay, got it. So if just to recap, what I believe I'm understanding is Basically the message is, look, you use your tools that you use to manage your work, whether that's Excel, whether that's Procore, whether that's Autodesk, doesn't matter to me. You use all your tools. We'll tap into all of that data, and we'll create for you meaningful analytics that you can use to make decisions on where to put your focus across your business.
Yep, that's exactly right. And it's flexible and dynamic enough that what we might determine as meaningful isn't necessarily meaningful for the end user. So we work with them to massage it in a way that does drive value for them.
Awesome.
Yep.
When you think about the most useful KPIs you've seen, right? The ones where people are like, once we started tracking this, it changed everything. What are the examples of, I don't know, the top 1 to 3?
Yeah, it's a hard, everything is connected, basically. There's no one single KPI that is the most meaningful, but the questions that people typically ask are, well, which projects are in trouble? How do I know? You mentioned,
how do I know a project
health
that's going off the
score.
rails? Yeah.
Right, exactly. If I'm looking at 50 projects or 5, how do I know which ones need attention?
Yeah.
How's our profitability doing, right? So a profitability curve, expected versus actuals, and then which teams are underperforming or performing well. And so each one of those we hear time and again, right? The challenge, and this is why it doesn't exist outside of what we've built, is every single one of them has this tree of all sorts of other KPIs that are feeding project health scores, that are feeding team performance scores. And so it all really comes from how do we, the Lego blocks that are building up to those things.
Okay. Got it. So, damn, no silver bullet.
Yeah, I mean, critical path tracking is a huge one, right? It's being able to do that effectively, project what's coming, submittals, getting them done on time.
I was just going to tell you that. To me, the magic number is submittals. Like I know there's way more to the puzzle, but that if there's one thing that gets me fired up, it's like, are you hitting your submittal timelines?
Yeah.
Because
and that oftentimes is just like this opaque kind of obscure target, and they're like, oh, I did my submittal registry and here's my submittal schedule, and oh well, that was just I had to do it. It's no, that you gave us dates.
That's
why
right.
are we not trying to hit these dates?
And to me, like across any given project, I want to see that we are 100% on track in every trade, that every submittal has been hit, that every submittal has been submitted, that all that stuff approved by the time we need. If there's an insanely stupid avoidable problem, it is materials delays.
Yep.
That are caused by your poor submittal game.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, and there's tons of those types of things, man.
I'm sure there are a lot more. It just happens to be one that I'm very close
another
to right
huge
now.
one. Another huge one is the RFI response times, right? Not just the volume of RFIs, but how fast from the time that an RFI is written to the time that an RFI is closed. Because if it takes a month to respond on average to RFIs, call it. Now you're looking at least a month until you start seeing changes or change events come through. And so there are constantly things like that where they're interconnected.
If I wanted to get even more leading, Joe, on the RFI front, I might even be thinking like, I want a volume of RFIs early in the project too, because I also want to give some love to our design community and say like, hey, when they get an RFI that is like a field generated RFI that needs to be answered in, an hour.
Mm-hmm.
The natural response I have is like, could you have identified that any sooner, sir?
Right. Right.
Is there anything that could have happened that
Yeah.
would help you to identify that any sooner? And so maybe there's another like leading indicator that if we're not seeing a volume of RFIs of at least X
Mhm.
at this early phase in the game, we need to jump in.
Exactly.
I'm really excited about what tracking these types of things and rolling it up into a dashboard, being able to look at a project health score and then doing a drill down into that project and figuring out what's causing it to be unhealthy. I'm fired up about the potential of it. Does this thing work, dude?
It's like magic. It's funny. We have heard that a couple of times where people we've been demoing for prospects and they go, this looks like magic because it's not something that exists in their frame of reference, right? Their alternatives are hire a team of analysts and just put them in a dark room and say churn through this data.
Yeah.
And then it's okay. Well, we're going from connecting your instance of Procore into a dashboard within 30 seconds. And now you have all this information right in front of you is, kind of mind blowing for a lot of people.
That's well, very, very cool. Stacy, what kind of questions do you have?
I just wanted to know more implementation phases. Like if you have a startup company that wants to implement this right away versus like a really established company, what kind of things or feedback can you give us for that or advice?
Yeah. I mean, the starting point is that you recognize you want to improve, right? There's no prerequisite on kind of volume of data needed or size of projects or anything like that to make your data valuable. It's understanding at a fundamental level. And Chad, you alluded to this early on, is like, what are the questions that you need to be asking yourselves as an organization to help just take that next step to improve. Now, from an implementation side, it doesn't matter to us, whether it's a large company with all of this historical data or a new company who, is running five projects. The process is the same. It's a simple add us to your Procore instance with, read only access, and we'll connect to the API and do it all for you in a matter of minutes. And from there, it's it's kind of the world's your oyster to a degree. What is meaningful to you? What is it that you really want to dive into? And ultimately, the data has to come from somewhere. Like we can't just make data appear out of thin air. So, as long as the data exists, whether in Excel or other forms, we connect to it very, very quickly.
And then who do you think should need access to the dashboard? Is it only top tier leadership or each project manager, or everyone should be looking at the same type of dashboard, or what are your recommendations?
It has value at every level. Whether you're an executive looking at a portfolio dashboard, which, is looking at project health and being able to identify which projects are in trouble, or you're a specific project manager in a single project that has certain KPIs that you're looking at. So there's value across the stakeholder chain, regardless of your role, even including those technical teams, the data analysts, those companies who have the resources to hire out their innovation teams and things like that, where their legacy approach to data management is incredibly manual. And so if we give them a better opportunity to do their job more effectively, there's value across the chain.
Okay.
Awesome. Well, this is great. Love to have this conversation again. As I said, very close to my heart. I mean, as I sit here, you can't make this up. I literally have an email that just hit my inbox from a great client that says KPIs, and he's attached a Word doc with manually gathered KPIs, guys. Right, that's what he's done, and he's sharing with me. Hey, here's where we are through 24 on across these KPIs for 25. And I have a question. Does this work for subcontractors?
It does. Yeah. We're agnostic in the market. Just as long as the data exists somewhere.
Awesome. Well, I will just forward this guy's info to you and
Love it. Easy.
just be like, dear client, please stop having to work so darn hard to get to your data. This has been awesome, Joe. Is there anything we haven't talked about that you want to make sure we say before the end? Hey, well, you know what? Where would people find out more? How would they get more information about Projexion?
Yeah, you can visit our website at projection.io, or you shoot me a personal note, joe@projection.io.
And Projexion here is spelled Projexion.
That's right.
Yeah, cool. So joe@projection.io, and then you could just go to projection.io as well. That's
right.
All right, awesome. I look forward to seeing this thing turn into a wildfire success story. I think there's no question a demand out there. And if what you're doing creates this kind of visibility, this kind of useful data, it truly is a game changer. So I'm thrilled to hear that this progress is happening, and can't wait to I got my popcorn.
Thank you, guys.
All right,
appreciate the time, you all. Take care.
You. Thanks, Joe.
See ya.
Appreciate it.
See ya.
All right, Stace, good stuff. Fun conversation. He's just a super nice guy too. That was an easy chat.
Yeah.
So what do we have happening next week?
So this might be your guest, Bill Mandara of Mancini Duffy. So the future of project positioning and the use of VR.
Yes, we're going to be talking about VR. We're going to be talking about, just the more fun on tech as we talk about what innovations exist to help companies contractors to do things faster and easier. So that'll be a good conversation.
Yeah.
Sweet. All right. Well, good. What'd you say?
Like, go Birds.
Yeah. Look, I want you to be happy. I would be a little more happy if the Commanders won, but I don't really care. I don't particularly care.
I really shouldn't say that because half my family and clients are all in Maryland. So
you're so nice. You're so nice that you're like, maybe I shouldn't just publicly read. No, it's you pull for you, darn it. That's what you do. Well, hey, great conversation today, Stace. Good to see you.
You too.
See ya.